Well, it turns out the leak was true. Tier 3 Jean Grey. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we have the 5th sneak peek and what I assume will be the final sneak peek before we get the key art and then the patch notes for the upcoming X-Men update. So I wanted to take a bit of time and explain, talk about the sneak peek and then explain a few things about Jean Grey, explain a few pieces of speculation that are still lingering because I leave just a little bit so I can sprinkle them on like cookie crumbs on each video to get to that sweet 10-minute mark to bake just to perfection at 350 in the oven of YouTube ad revenue. And then also talk a little bit more about Jean Grey and a little bit more about the update and the actual update time. So we got here the power of this uncanny entity knows no bounds. And now here they're showing the Phoenix, which is interesting because in the Uncanny run and in the Phoenix Resurrection run that is followed by X-Men Red and then Uncanny X-Men, Jean Grey loses the Phoenix Force. And this is kind of the new Jean Grey that they've been pitching to us in the comics, that has this kind of old school blue helmet thing with the hair, who is super powerful, but doesn't have the Phoenix Force. And so it's kind of like trying to re-explore or redefine the character separate from the Phoenix Force, because there's just so much drama and so much power surrounding the entity that any comic series that includes Jean Grey, it includes the Phoenix Force, Dark Phoenix, etc., it just gets kind of messy and out of hand. So I mean, I don't want to get into the actual details of why the writers did that, but they did do that. So it's interesting that here we have sort of a regression or maybe just the fact that we're not actually going to see that in the game, despite the fact that that happens in the comics. And it's also interesting because while in the comics, which have all been canceled, by the way, because we've got House of M and Power of X, or House of X and Power of X coming up soon. In the comics, that's one thing, but then we have the Dark Phoenix movie. Now, the Dark Phoenix movie is the last vestige of the old Fox before they were purchased by Disney, so we're not quite sure whether Marvel wants to promote Dark Phoenix or not, but it's very coincidental that we're getting this update at the end of May, at the beginning of June, and other games are also getting the same thing, the similar things. You've got Strike Force getting Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey, the Psylocke, Colossus, these kinds of X-Men. And then you've also got, I believe, Puzzle Quest. I think Contest of Champions is the only one that isn't doing something yet that is X-Men and Jean Grey related. But then on the other hand, you have the acknowledgement that we are having an Uncanny X-Men. I mean, there's no other reason why they would use Uncanny here. They're acknowledging the fact that they're drawing a lot of inspiration for this update from Uncanny. So it might just be that they're just mixing the two, and it's not strictly comic book and it's not strictly movie, and it's just a good time in general to talk about the X-Men. Personally, I think any time is a good time to have an X-Men update, but that's just my take on it. For those of you that were speculating, is Jean Grey going to lose her Phoenix powers in the game? Is she going to turn into a villain in the game? Is she going to change from fire damage from the Dark Phoenix, or the Phoenix Force, to mind damage, which is more typical of someone with telekinetic and telekinesis and those kinds of mental powers? I don't really know, and I don't really think that it matters, and I don't really think it makes sense to speculate, because as you can see, there's so many mixed messages being sent by Netmarble, not intentional mixed messages, but just mixed messages. So it's better to just wait to see what the update holds, and then we'll make a decision from there. But traditionally and historically, heroes do not get turned into villains. Villains get turned into heroes, a la Nebula, Archangel, etc. And so we have this look of the Phoenix. Obviously, it's kind of easy to say. Right here we have the T3. It's the most blatant and the most obvious tier 3 symbol that we've seen yet. You know, we had the yellow one passing by for Captain Marvel. We had the hidden tier 3 for Thanos in that kind of destroyed city image. But this one is by far the one that is the most obvious and the easiest one to read. Over on Mobrum, it's not too much different, but here we have heading back to the HQ, and they were looking out into the dark sky, Dark Phoenix, and there was a mysterious figure, and he couldn't see what the figure was, and then they took a good shot, and what do you see in the stars? The dazzling blaze that lit up the dark sky looked both threatening and beautiful, kind of like Dark Phoenix, and then there was some sort of energy, and it felt powerful. So yes, of course, we know Jean Grey is coming to absolutely rip the meta a new one. and I'm, gonna have to bow down to my Jean Grey overlord. So the first big question I think that we have to answer, and I think I've answered this before, but now we have a much clearer indicator in-game. When is this update landing? For those of you that still don't know, well, you go over to the event quest, you see that it ends in 3 days, 10 hours, and by the time you check in-game and you're watching this video, it will say something different. It'll say like 3 days, 1 hour, or it'll say 2 days, 23 hours. That is your clock. That's going to help you, and it's going to guide you as to when this update lands, because 3 days and 10 hours from now is going to be Tuesday, and then Wednesday, in the wee hours of Wednesday on the 29th, I'm talking like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., so right after we dip from Tuesday into Wednesday, that is when the update will go live. And now, lately, actually, traditionally, the updates have taken quite a long time to update in terms of Eastern time, and they've been quite late into the morning. But actually, the last update was much better. I think the game was live at 11 p.m. Eastern time, which is 3 hours ahead of. And 3 hours earlier than the other scheduled maintenance time. So I really hope that Netmarble sticks to that. It's a much more, I think, universally friendly time zone, because it's still quite good for people in Asia. It's happening kind of in the morning for them, anywhere from 10 a.m. to like noon. And then for us in North America, I mean, someone's going to get screwed here, so sorry to European people who it's happening at like 5, 6 in the morning for them. But I mean, you could get up really early for the update, I guess. Anyways, one time zone is always going to be screwed, but for the North American people and for me and for the people watching the stream, it's much easier for me to stay up late and to cover the full stream and the full highlights and dive into everything if the game comes back out of maintenance, if it goes live again with the new update at 11 p.m. rather than 2 a.m. That's just a personal wish. I don't have control over these things, but I just wanted to throw my wish out into the universe in case the Dark Phoenix Netmarble gods were listening and they wanted to repeat last month's early maintenance. It's still going to be about 5 to 6 hours of maintenance. It just matters when the maintenance starts. And when the maintenance starts on Tuesday, on the 28th, will dictate when it ends on the 28th or the 29th, and then that will dictate when the update actually goes live. And of course, all of what I'm saying is based on the Eastern Standard Time calendar, my calendar. You're going to have to add or subtract hours if you're in a different part of the world, and you just have to figure that out on your own. As far as the update goes, I've still seen quite a few people asking very large and kind of alarming questions, and I haven't covered this in a while in a video, so I will say it now, and I'm sorry that I haven't said it earlier. Do not spend any large number of resources just before an update. It is always a bad idea to blow thousands of crystals or millions of gold or thousands of resources, whether they're tier 2 materials or they're tier 3 materials or they're Phoenix Feathers X-Gene materials, just before an update. Now, I know that this is going to be an X-Men update, so there's a very low chance that we're going to need these things, but just to be safe, just to be sure, just keep hoarding. Get into that hoarder's mentality. Embrace your inner Cynicalex free to play and just keep farming. Put your head down, keep farming, keep playing the game every day, and just collect those materials, but don't spend a penny. Trust me, you'll thank me when the update comes around. You will have more resources to make the best decisions possible. If there was a gold spending event or if there was a crystal spending event that was on right now, then maybe I would have a different story to say and I would have some different advice for you, but there's nothing. There's literally nothing, so just do all your daily tasks, have fun in the game, and make sure you do the event quest to collect all the tokens. Everyone should have, I have 240 right now, but I haven't finished, so by the end of today, you should have 320 tokens, and you'll be able to spend them after the update goes live. So just keep saving all of your resources, and then when the update goes live, we'll be able to make a better decision, especially for those of you that haven't purchased your first epic quest yet. I think that's a big doozy, and it might honestly shift what my free-to-play account does. Now, I'm still heavily leaning towards the Invisible Woman Doomsday Deluxe Pack quest because of the fact that it gives you these extra rewards and because of the fact that it gives you double the amount of gold. That's a really big buff. However, despite the fact that Magneto is the weakest character out of Magneto, Psylocke, and Invisible Woman, especially at tier 2, it's going to take a lot to convince me that this pack is worth more. and it's going to take a lot for Jean Grey. I mean, she's going to have to really hit it out of the park, not even with her tier 3. She's going to have to hit it out of the park with her uniform at tier 2. So that's one of the first things that I want to dive into when she gets her uniform. How good is a level 60 Jean Grey with her uniform? Because believe it or not, there's going to be a lot of people who only have the ability to get that for at least a few weeks because they just don't have the gold, or they just don't have the X-Men materials to upgrade her, or they just get screwed on her potential and can't get her up to level 70. And so it's going to be really important to gauge just how much they buffed her. If she gets her uniform and she becomes, you know, she starts competing for the top of the meta again without level 70, then things are actually going to look very grim. She's probably going to be an absolute nightmare at tier 3. But if she doesn't seem that much stronger with her uniform at level 60, that's not a bad sign. That's a good sign that the character's been balanced for level 70, or possibly, hopefully, for tier 3, because you don't want just a character getting a uniform at level 60 to snap her fingers and suddenly become capable of duking it out with tier 3 Thanoses and tier 3 Captain Marvels, because we spent so much time and resources building up those characters. Please don't destroy them before our eyes in just 1 or 2 updates. Now, as far as it goes for the costs of these things, I've also seen this thrown around a bit because Jean Grey is a native tier 2. People have been comparing her, and because she's, you know, such a prized character, to Thanos. So people are saying that her uniform is going to cost 1,500 crystals, and her tier 3 is going to cost 1,600 CCF instead of the 1,200 CCF that it's cost for Deadpool, Wolverine, and Mr. Fantastic, or the regular 800 CCF that it's cost for all of the other tier 3s in the game. I honestly don't think that that's going to be the case, but Jean Grey is the first unlockable native tier 2 from the Epic Quest. You know, we have Strife and we have Doctor Doom, and neither of them have gotten their tier 3, so it's hard to say. There's a possibility that Netmarble is going to make Jean Grey like Thanos, but part of me thinks that they won't. I know that doesn't really mean much to you, and you can't really trade that in for any sort of value. You can't. That's not a coupon that you can use to get some of your crystals back or some of your CCF back. But it's just a hunch that I have. I think if I was gonna bet, I would bet that Jean Grey is going to be a 1,200 CCF character with a 1050 crystal uniform, like Deadpool, like Wolverine, and like Mr. Fantastic. But I do want to hear from you guys. What do you think is going to be the cost of Jean Grey, both in her tier 3 upgrade and in terms of her uniform? Do you also think that they could change her typing with this uniform? I don't think so, because if anything, she's going to lose the Phoenix Force, which would make her even more of a blast type, like Emma Frost, like Psylocke, like these other telekinetic types or telekinesis types. But there is a possibility, or did they miss the boat with the original look of Universal? Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think, and let me know how much you've saved up for this uniform, or for this update, excuse me, for the X-Men, and how excited you are about it. Hopefully, in a few days, in about 3 days or 2 days, we'll see the key art. I think the key art should come in 2 days, and then the patch notes should come in about 3 days. In the early hours, in the early morning of Tuesday at like 2 to 3 to 4 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm very, very excited to read through those patch notes and make a video on that. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again today. Take care.